Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video, and welcome back here to the kitchen to another cooking video. Now for today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to build and assemble a lasagna. Now in the interest of time, I've already pre-prepped a couple things that we're going to need for this, so in a moment here I'll show you everything that we need. So without any further ado, let's get started. So real quick, everything you're going to need, we're going to be actually doing two different lasagnas. So I'm going to be making a meat lasagna and a veggie one, which I have a smaller pan for. So of course you're going to need your pan. Don't worry about the little things on the side. This was previously used for another lasagna. Didn't quite come off, but a little bit of cheese never hurt anybody. So obviously we're going to need our pan. We have our meat sauce here. So again, I just went ahead and made a quick meat sauce. I do have another video of making tomato sauce. I think I talk about meat sauce, so you can check out that video if you want to know how I made the sauce. Slight variation, but almost the same. And then we have our ricotta and mozzarella mix here with a little bit of parsley and basil and a touch of salt and pepper for some extra seasoning. We still have some mozzarella here on the side in case we need some extra, because no such thing as too much cheese. We have some shredded Parmesan here as well. We have a little bit of extra tomato sauce if we need it, which is actually going to be the main component for our veggie lasagna. And over here I have some water boiling to cook our pasta. And a quick pro tip: when you're making your lasagna noodles, you want to have a little bit of a cold water bath right beside, because once the noodles are cooked, you want to get them right in there to shock them, to cool them off, to stop cooking, because of course you don't want your noodles to fall apart before you bake your lasagna. So that's everything that we're going to need to get started, and as I said, in a moment here, we'll get to building after I've cooked a few of the noodles. A quick little tip on the noodles. So when you're cooking them, you don't want to cook them all the way, as I said, because of course we are going to still bake the lasagna. They're going to continue to cook with all the sauce there. So basically you want to get them to a point where they're soft and pliable enough that you can kind of work with them, but not so soft that they're falling apart. And then, as I mentioned, of course, you're going to take them out of your hot water, put them into your cold water bath to shock them, to stop the cooking process for now, and then that's it. And another thing is, as you're making a lasagna, as you empty one round, you want to be putting some more in to cook, so that you don't have to kind of stop and wait too long between building your layers to go on to the next one. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish these, drop some more in, and then we'll go and get to building. Alright everyone, so now that we've got some noodles cooked, we got some more on the way, we're ready to start. And just one more thing that I added here is I have a small cutting board. Just sometimes you might need to trim a piece of noodle, so always want to have that handy nearby. And just to start off, I have a little bit of olive oil here. I always like to start with a base layer of a little bit of the tomato sauce and just a little bit of oil around the edges, just so nothing sticks. Now I happen to have a little spray can here, so I can get just a little bit, but if you don't have one of these, just put a dab of olive oil in the middle and just use your hands or a paper towel or something just to roll around the edges, so hopefully stuff doesn't stick. So we'll just go ahead and spray our pan a little bit like so. That's all you need. And then with just the plain tomato sauce, we'll put just a little bit of that on the bottom, shake it around so it kind of sits down there. If it doesn't go quite all to the edges, it's okay, because as we layer, everything's going to go to the edges. But go ahead, do that. We can set that aside. Bear with me as I check my noodles, and always keep an eye on your noodles on the stove, guys. I don't want your water to go down or something to boil over. Right, so with that out of the way, for our base layer, we have our tomato sauce, and now we're just going to start with some noodles. Now luckily, these full-size noodles are pretty much the entire length of my pan. You might notice there's a little bit, if you guys see, there's a little bit of overhang. I'm going to leave it. It's okay, because it's not too bad. If it was going to be creeping all the way up the sides, of course, I would want to trim that down. But you can go ahead and get your noodles. Now, some are a little bit shorter. You can add some pieces, and this is where you're going to want the cutting board, because sometimes you might need to cut in a piece there. But for the bottom layer, just basically lay out your pieces. You also might want to grab a little bit of paper towel to maybe dry off some of the noodles so they're not super wet. So we can see there we have now our base layer fully covered. And then we can go ahead and basically want to do layers. So for this one, what I'm going to do with the meat one, I'm going to do every other layer. I'm going to do a layer of meat, and then we're going to do a cheese layer, then a meat layer and a cheese layer. Now if you want to add extra cheese, I'm going to put some Parmesan on top of the meat, but you always want to make sure to save a little bit of the Parmesan mix to sprinkle all over the top. So just to show you guys quickly, and I'm not going to show you every single layer, just in the interest of time, but get your spoonful of your meat and you want to spread it across. You don't want it to be super thick, because again, you want this to cook as evenly as possible, and you want to make sure you have enough for all of your layers. So we're just going to get a couple spoons there, get our first layer, spread it all around. Make sure it's evenly covered. You don't want to miss anything. So you can see there, we have a full coverage layer of meat. Now I'm going to go back in here with some more noodles. And then we have our second layer. And for this layer, we're going to go in with our ricotta mix. Now remember, this mix is ricotta cheese, just with some mozzarella cheese, salt, pepper, a bit of basil and parsley. First mesh of seasoning. And then for that, again, you just want to go spread it as best as possible. If try not to disturb your other layer too much. Kind of get it in there, and don't be afraid. Get in there with your hands, guys. Make sure you move it around. Again, you don't want to overload it, because you don't want your layers to be too thick, and of course you want to make sure you have enough to cover your layers. Now for something like this, I would say about 4 to 5 layers is probably good for lasagna. Of course, if you can stuff some more in there, be my guest, stuff some more layers in there. But you want to make sure your lasagna doesn't come up way too far over the pan, because when it bakes in the oven, it's going to spill over and it's going to cause a mess, and then it might not cook evenly. So yeah, about 4 to 5 layers is usually about the best. There's another layer with some cheese on there. I'm going to put a bit of Parmesan in there as well. Right, and then after that, we can basically just keep layering. Now, as I said, I'm not going to bore you guys with doing every single layer, but there you go. That's the basic idea. You want to keep doing layers. You want to do repeating layers. If you had anything else going in there, like if you had, maybe you're doing a veggie one, then you can maybe do a different veggie on every layer, so that every bite's just a little bit different. But yeah, just basically keep that in mind. We're doing lasagna, it's all about the layers. Essentially lasagna, think of it like a pasta cake. So I'm going to go ahead and not bore you guys with this entire thing. I'm going to go ahead and do my layers, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. So I've pretty much built the lasagna. I'm on the last layer. Now one thing I should mention when I was talking about how many layers you have in your lasagna, you always want to factor in obviously the top is a layer. So this is going to be 5 layers in total. I have basically 4 layers underneath the filling. So meat, cheese, and then we have our top layer. Now also for your top layer, you want to keep this as kind of the most even layer with your noodles. So try to pick however many you need to cover. You pick kind of the nicest ones. I have cut one little strip on the side to close it in, but again, you'll see I basically have four full noodles and then one little strip to close in the side. Again, the top is obviously the first thing people are going to see, even though it is going to be covered by some toppings, but you want to keep your top layer as your nicest layer. So to finish off quickly here, I'm going to do one more layer. I'm actually going to do a mixed layer on the top, so you get a little bit of everything on the first bite, and people can also kind of see what you're working with. So we're going to do a little bit of our meat sauce on there. I'm going to drop a little bit of the ricotta on there at the same time, and we're going to basically just go ahead and spread those out together. I still have the Parmesan and I still have some of that mozzarella, so then we're just going to go ahead and evenly coat the top with our cheese. So we'll go with our Parmesan, we'll put that over the top, and remember, I don't believe in the words there's too much cheese, so go ahead and just get that on there. You want to get a nice even coating of the cheese, because again, when this cooks, you want to have that kind of nice crusty top layer, and the cheese is going to actually just help hold everything down. So we have our Parmesan all over the top. Then I'm going to get just a little bit more of the mozzarella and get that all over there as well. You don't have to go super heavy, because I am going to be making a second one, of course, as I believe I mentioned off the top. So there we go. Let's hold this up to the camera so you guys can see a little better. So there we go. There's going to be our finished lasagna. Alright everyone, so that's the process on how to make the meat lasagna. Now, a couple things. At this stage, obviously your lasagna is done, assembled, ready to go. Now, if you wanted to, you could throw it right in the oven, of course, but you do want to let it maybe sit just for a little while, kind of let everything blend together, let it settle down in its pan a little bit. And in my case, at this current moment with the one I'm making, it's not needed until tomorrow, Saturday, the next day. So I'm going to just let it sit in the fridge overnight, let it set up a little bit, and then we'll put it in the oven. I will cover the cooking process, and obviously lasagna is one of those things that is essentially all pre-cooked. So if you really wanted to make it ahead of time, if you're going to be using it within the next couple of days, you can leave it in the fridge. If you're going to be wanting to store it for long term, I would recommend freezing it as is and then pulling it out and cooking it down the line whenever that is. If it's going to be more than a couple days, you definitely want to put that in the freezer and let everything set up. Take it out, I guess, the night or a couple hours before you want to cook it, let it fully defrost, and then go on from there. Yeah, like I said, we will cover the cooking process in a little bit here, but now I'm not going to bore you with the whole making of it, but I am going to be doing the veggie lasagna, so just really quickly I'll show you everything I'm going to be putting together for that. And if you're interested in the recipe and kind of the measurements and everything that I've used for this, I will put them in the description below if you guys want to follow this along for yourself, or if you want to go ahead and make your own sauce and everything, obviously go ahead. Then you can just use this guide as a guide for how to build lasagna if you've never done it, or maybe I do it slightly differently than you do it, you never know. But let me stop rambling on too much. Here's our finished meat lasagna. Once again, I'm going to jump into the veggie real quick, and then we'll cover the cooking a little bit later, and then that'll be it for this one. Basically, same process for doing the veggie lasagna as with the meat, but just quick for the ingredients. Obviously, I'm using the same noodles. I have the same ricotta cheese mix, our Parmesan, the tomato sauce, which is the same sauce that I put the meat into. And then for the veggie lasagna, you can do as simple as just doing tomato sauce and cheese, or you can throw really your favorite veg in there. Just for this one in particular, because I had it laying around the house, I just cooked a little bit of broccoli, cauliflower, and carrots, and a little bit of mushroom in there. So again, same process as with the meat. We'll start with our base layer with some olive oil, tomato sauce, and then we'll just keep alternating layers between veggie and the cheese, with our top layer in this one, of course, just being the ricotta, well, basically the cheese and the tomato sauce. So before we cook the lasagna, you want to make sure they're covered with foil. Like so. I'd also recommend putting a piece of parchment paper in between it so that your cheese doesn't stick. Preheat your oven to 350. I know this has 355. My oven has a fancy setting, but 350 for about an hour. After about 50 minutes, you want to uncover the foil, and then you want to cook another 10 minutes so the top gets crispy. And after the full hour, your lasagna is going to start to look like this. So as you can obviously tell, I'm filming this end bit a little bit after the fact. Unfortunately, I wasn't actually here to be able to cook the lasagna, so hopefully the voiceover wasn't too out of sync over there. Luckily, of course, my mom was home and was able to cook the lasagnas and get those quick little video shots for us. So as you saw in the one video clip there, my oven said 355. I got a fancy new oven with a lasagna setting, and that's the temp that it put it to. But as I said, 350 is more than enough. I guess if you want to be super specific and go 355, but again, the entire recipe is going to be down below. 350 is kind of the standard. That's going to be fine for about for about an hour. I realize everyone's oven is a little bit different, so just keep an eye, as we saw there. You know, after about 50 minutes, everything in the middle should be cooked, and you should have a nice melted cheese layer on the top. And then for the last 10 minutes or so, you want to take your cover off of there, put it back in the oven, and let the heat get right at the top, kind of get that cheese nice and crispy. Obviously, keep an eye that it doesn't burn. You don't want burnt cheese. You know, you might get a little bit of black on the edges with the noodles. It happens. It's not a huge deal. But yeah, just watch that. Obviously, the whole top doesn't burn or evaporate too much. But there we go. That's the video on how to make lasagna. Again, I've said it way too many times. Recipe and everything will be down below. I'll put a link somewhere here at the end too for my video on how to make the tomato sauce. But just like that, if you guys have any more suggestions for cooking videos, things you guys want to learn or know, let me know down in the comments. I of course have some stuff planned for the future. But just like that, if you guys enjoyed this video, as always, please give it a big thumbs up. Remember, this is to subscribe to the channel for more videos in future, and I'll see you on the next one.